the parallels are so uncanny that it's almost like you want to, slap people and be like, be original for a second.
Welcome to another episode of Good is in the Details. I'm your host, Gwendolyn Dolske. I hope you're all doing well. I hope you're staying safe. I hope you're not hoarding toilet paper. And I hope you're wearing a mask. Wear a mask when you go out. Now, in this crazy time, Rudy and we got back in touch with pop culture critic, writer, and professor Dahlia Schweitzer. You might remember her interview from episode 7, where we discussed her book, Going Viral, Zombies, Viruses, and the End of the World. And I mean, of course, we had to talk to her again. She literally wrote the book about viruses and pandemics in film, but there's parallels. They're a little creepy. So we get a chance to talk about that. Just some quick housekeeping. There's now a Facebook page for the pod. Please like it. Then you can keep updated on what's going on. And Rudy and I will be posting on there. There's an Instagram account. There's also an email, goodisinthedetailspod@gmail.com. And I want to give a shout out to Ben, the newest patron of the show. Thank you so much. He's my friend from grad school. That's very cool. We knew each other in Leuven. Absolute sweetheart. Thank you. And now here is part 1 of our interview with Dahlia Schweitzer. Dahlia, I'm looking at your book and this is insane. The parallels.
It's insane. It's like when it all first started happening, I was like, is this like some weird Twilight Zone episode? Like it's insane. It's insane.
Dahlia, I can't be the only person that has cited your book in the last month. Am I? There's no way. I mean, how many people have?
I actually don't. You're the only one I know of.
What? These people are crazy.
It's weird. And I had one article that I think I maybe sent you that was in NBC News.
I don't know if you sent that to me. I'd love to see it.
I wrote an essay for NBC News basically about the parallels between what was happening in real life and what's happening on screen. And I kind of thought that something would come out of that, at the very least, like, someone would reach out for a quote, but nothing.
No, my goal is from this podcast and sharing my article far and wide is for you to be inundated with phone calls and interviews because you.
I want that. I know.
I'm trying to help.
I kind of thought Rutgers would do more too, because obviously they're the ones profiting off of it.
I'll say something to this. So
yeah.
Here's what I think is going on. I've mentioned this before. There's this book that I know the author and I know him very, very well. It's The Raffle and all that other type of stuff. And I talked to a couple people that have read the book and I've told them, hey, why aren't you promoting that book? Like, what's your problem right now when this fictional book pretty much predicted everything that's happening in the world? You know what they told me? They said, the only thing I'm reading and promoting right now is comedy. I'm not kidding. I think people don't want to know that people knew or were writing about this type of stuff out there. I think people want to go back to their weird like fantasy lives. That's what I think.
That's what you would think, and that's what I'm doing. But like everyone I know is watching Contagion and Outbreak and Containment. It's like, I'm like, really? Just look outside your window. No, everyone's watching those movies.
Not me. I'm telling you, everybody I know is day drinking, is watching a whole bunch of comedy films, playing poker online, and only limiting themselves to 15 to 20 minutes of the news. And nobody's watching scary movies. So it sounds like we have way different friends and people dealing with this. Gwen, what about you? What have you heard?
Well, wait, I was just going to say, Rudy, show your drink.
Oh yeah, we're speaking of day drinking.
It's 1 o'clock in the afternoon.
It is 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and I noticed that you were taking a sip of a tasty cocktail, Dahlia. Why don't you tell everybody what that was?
I just have water.
Oh sure. Yeah, this is water too. It's water mixed with White Claw mango. But Gwen, what are your friends and family watching? Are they dealing with this by watching Outbreak? Are they watching Contagion? What's going on?
No, I've heard people are trying to stay off the news because it is too hard. But also just talking to Dr. Tanzvati, she and her wife, they're watching comedy in the evening. Yeah, people are, I think in the beginning, people were obsessed with the news, with hearing more, but every single day it's just bad. And so people are trying to do other things, like fill this void, I mean, I know I just talked to somebody today and he was just saying, cleaned out every junk drawer. I mean, just has like tried every hobby. It's just done so many things. Yeah. Well, Dahlia,
Right.
something I wanted to ask you before we even get into talking about, viruses, how are you in New York? I mean, this must be a completely different reality for you.
It is really, really, really surreal. Basically, I don't really leave the house unless I'm going to walk my dog. And so I periodically will forget that it's happening, because obviously in my apartment, everything is normal. And then I'll like walk outside and I'll have forgotten to put on a mask and everyone's wearing masks. And I'm just like, oh, right, this is real. So it's totally crazy. And it's like all the stores and restaurants are closed. Like all the gates are down. I have this amazing shot. There was a guy playing tennis in the street like 2 days ago. So there was so little traffic. So he was hitting a tennis ball against the side of a building, which was genius. But no, it's so, and like now literally I think 99% of people are wearing masks.
Wow.
So
what part of New York are you in?
I'm in the Upper West Side. I'm kind of near Columbia.
Oh, okay. Yeah. All the way up there. Okay. When I was there, I was in the Upper East Side, pretty close. I was off at 96th and 2nd. And yeah, I mean, back then it was a war zone because they were building the 2nd Avenue subway. So it was just noise 24/7. What I've heard about New York City, it's so eerily silent that you can hear the birds chirping when you go outside. And you used to never be able to hear that, except there's one thing that I've heard that's really scary is the sirens. Is it true? Is it 24 hours?
I don't know if it's 24 hours. I mean, like right now it's totally silent, but it definitely seems like there are more ambulances. I don't know if it's more because there's kind of no traffic, but there definitely seems to be a lot of ambulances. Also, I don't know if you read about that horrible organization, Samaritan's Purse.
No.
They're like the homophobic evangelical medical relief organization, and so they created like a camp not too far from me in Central Park, and it's like all these like white kind of vinyl tents.
Yes,
What is their goal?
Well, they're providing health services, I think, in connection with Mount Sinai. I think I read an article about that. Is that what you're referring to, Dahlia? Yes. Okay.
Exactly. But they apparently have a bad track record for their healthcare services, and like anyone who wants to work for them has to basically sign a pledge to Jesus Christ, and they have like they hate gays and Muslims, and I mean it's like deeply problematic, but also very surreal because that's like a 15-minute walk from my house.
Yeah, there was a big controversy about this. I read about this a little while ago because my wife, when we were living in New York, she trained at Mount Sinai. So that's where she was that's where she did all of her general surgery training. We still have friends there. I mean, everything that's happening in New York and our connection to New York is with the first responders and the healthcare workers. And so I've been following a lot of things. And yeah, what Mount Sinai said is that no, when we allowed this group to come in, since they volunteered to set up these, health camps, is we made them sign statements saying that they won't discriminate against homosexuals and they won't discriminate against Muslims and they won't discriminate. Right. They signed all that, but so what? I mean, they signed something. It's always their actions that I mean, who in this day and age in a pandemic, who's going to enforce whether or not they're actually living by that? So that sucks. That does suck.
Yeah. So they're like these little things that are surreal, like the lines of people outside the grocery stores. At 7 p.m. you have the clapping for the health workers. I mean, it's like the other day I was walking Broadway, which I hadn't done in a while, and I was like, oh yeah, the subway. Like I haven't taken the subway in weeks.
I'd be very careful before you go down there. I mean, I
know.
I'm not allowed to talk about this very much because they're a big client of the firm, but I have heard that the homeless have turned underground subway system into like an entire city. Like they're all living down there, and it's like a whole weird dystopian thing going on. Yeah, there was a big article in the New York Times about it the other day. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Because I thought that a lot of them were being offered shelter to get them off the streets and stuff.
Maybe it wasn't New York Times, but it was definitely an article that talked about how all the homeless are taking over like the truly abandoned, like nobody using subway stations right now.
Right.
Well, London swept up everybody and put them in hotels. I don't know if you saw that image of people in Vegas where they put
in the parking lot.
Yes. When you have all these empty hotels and it's just outrageous. But that's one of the things that the pandemic, I think, is going to reveal are these cracks in our in our system.
That's, I think, the most kind of terrifying part is because we could have been South Korea. I mean, literally, there's no justification for everything that's going on right now. Like, if South Korea could get it together, why couldn't we get it together? It's like, it's all the cracks in our infrastructure.
Right. How are New Yorkers responding to the governor? Because it would be interesting to see what you guys think. I mean, I'm watching some of his press briefings.
Everyone is in love with him.
Okay.
Which I don't totally understand. Like, I feel like the bar is so low now that you have you have an authority figure who appears capable, and it's like hero worship.
Okay.
I mean, there's still there's a lot that's problematic about Cuomo, and for instance, up until 2 weeks ago, construction workers were deemed essential by Cuomo. And so while all this was happening, construction workers were still going to work to build, luxury lofts and commercial office space where they didn't even have, running water. I mean, just insane stuff. And that was because Cuomo was basically hand in glove with the real estate market, with the developers.
Okay.
So he's not perfect, but people are sort of entranced. Oh my God, that video is crazy, Rudy.
Yeah, this is what I'm sharing my screen right now. This is the coronavirus update. The video shows homeless taking over car after car on the number 2 line. Like, they're living in the trains right now.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty. Yeah, no, it's pretty insane. I mean, it's crazy, and it's just getting worse because MTA workers are getting sick, and people just don't want to go down there, and they're just worried. It's absolute insanity.
And why are they down there?
I think these are the ones that have not. New York has put up to 6,000 into local hotels, but these, I mean, let's just, some homeless people are mentally ill, and they don't want to be in a hotel. They don't want anybody to take care of them. So these are clearly the mentally ill ones that don't want to, be taken care of.
And they don't want to be on they normally be on the sidewalk. Like, where would they normally be?
Yeah, they normally would be probably on the sidewalk, but now maybe, maybe like babies. I mean, Gwen can attest to this. They fall asleep better with the rolling rides of the subway. I mean, I have no idea, but it appears that they're down there and sleeping on those trains.
What do you think is going to eventually happen? Do you think, could you see it going to a point where people are going to be testing the homeless, that it's not even voluntary, that people are, that this is spreading and people go and test people who are out on the street?
What's crazy is that we don't have tests.
Yeah.
I mean, it's I know multiple people who have symptoms who can't get tests.
Right.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah. So we're not even at a point where we're going to be testing people who don't even want to get tested or aren't, going out of their way to find a test or whatever. I mean, it's crazy. I know people who they call their doctor and their doctor's like, well, I don't have a test and your temperature is not high enough and the hospital's too dangerous, so just stay home. Yeah.
As fantastic of a response that both New York and California and the other states that have really taken charge and started to shut some things down. I mean, I wish New York shut down earlier than California. They had some other issues to deal with the city schools and the feeding of the children and safety. We in California didn't necessarily have to worry about the tests, the amount of the tests, the amount of the COVID tests. That's the biggest failure of our CDC, in that they created we decided to create our own test, and it was a horrible test that we created in February. It had faulty components to it, whereas Germany saw this coming and they created a perfect test right from the beginning. And if you go study how different European countries have fared under the coronavirus epidemic, you can see Italy's reaction, you can see France, you can see Spain, and then you compare that to Germany. Germany did a phenomenal job creating tests very, very early, much like South Korea. And we were bringing up South Korea. South Korea, we should be like South Korea, but South Korea also is testing hundreds of thousands of people every week, whereas we can't test anybody. It all comes down to the testing.
I know.
And today, harking back to, and I know we're going to talk about your 6 tropes from your book, but interestingly enough, right before we jumped onto our Zoom call, and I'll share the screen so we know what we're looking at. Governor Newsom at 12:30 today outlined the 6 critical indicators the state of California will consider before modifying the stay-at-home order and other COVID-19 interventions. And the 6 indicators are listed down here. California's 6 indicators for modifying the state stay-at-home order are the ability to monitor and protect our communities through testing, contact tracing, isolating, supporting those who are positive exposed, the ability to prevent infection in people who are at risk for more severe COVID-19, which there's a lot more indicators coming out about who are really at risk, the ability of the hospital and health systems to handle surges, the ability to develop therapeutics to meet the demand, the ability for businesses, schools, and childcare facilities to support physical distancing, and the ability to determine when to reinstitute certain measures such as the stay-at-home orders if necessary. So you have your 6 tropes. He's got his 6 indicators. There's something about 6. I don't know what it is.
Well, I think...
Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I think something that seems to be confusing are people who are resisting this are afraid of that kind of authority, and not really recognizing the danger. It's just a crazy thing where people want to defy this, and it has nothing to do with health or science, but just, you can't tell me what to do. And it's really scary.
Yeah, some Michigan, a whole bunch of people up in Michigan, like 10,000 cars or some kind of, who knows? There's definitely those Michigan militia people that were, caused some serious problems in our country, descended on the state capitol to protest the governor's stay-at-home orders. And I think this is just the beginning. I mean, the amount of gun sales, the amount of bullets that were purchased over the last month, if the states continue to tighten the screws in order for health reasons, there's going to be some gunshots. I guarantee it. The American focus on individualism and personal freedom is now battling with these stay-at-home orders, and there's no way this is going to end 100% peaceably. Yes, I write dystopian science fiction on the side, but I'm also a realist. Something bad is going to happen. I hate to say it, but that's my prediction. Dahlia, what do you think?
Absolutely. Like, I'm just waiting for the looting to start. Just like you look at all these other countries that have set up these sort of financial, protection programs for all their citizens. And then it's like in America, we're getting one $1,200 check, maybe.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. It's
ridiculous. Like, I don't know. I know that as far as I know, there were very few landlords in New York that come April 1st were sympathetic. And I can't imagine they're going to be any come May 1st. And it's like, I don't know what people are going to do. Like, I know so many people that are out of work.
And if you're poor, you get less. Wasn't there something like that? Or I don't know if it changed, but it was, if you made under a certain amount, then you were only going to get $600.
Yes, there was that, because we were talking about how like students or something were going to get screwed, or like senior citizens, maybe people on disability. But I know the thing that to me is insane is the $1,200 is consistent depending on where you live.
Right.
So like in New York, $1,200 isn't even 1 month's rent. I mean, it's like, that's nothing. Whereas, if you live in like rural West Virginia, yeah, okay, maybe that's a nice chunk of change. But it's like, if I got $1,200, it's like a blip in the radar, so it's so stupid.
It is. No, it doesn't cover rent in California either. That's incredible.
No, exactly. It's exactly, yeah. So it's like the $1,200 makes no sense. And then you have all these people who've lost their health insurance because they've lost their jobs. I mean, it's a mess on so many levels.
Well, something that has been said by the current administration is nobody could have seen this. Nobody knew. And here you've got a whole book showing that culturally there has been this view of it. And that not only that, but we've seen people like, was it Bill Gates gave a TED Talk in 2015 giving this idea of what would really injure us, the economy, is a virus that attacked the respiratory system. Yeah, people have been talking about this for a long time.
Yeah, no, this is no surprise. That's why it's so infuriating on so many levels, because it's just like everyone knew.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. When you were talking about the violence and the looting, I'm thinking if we're going to watch how this unfolds, if culture has told us anything, or what, films have told us, that you're right, that is the direction that it goes.
Yeah. And then, as soon, it's like people are going to run out of money. Like, people who haven't already run out of money are going to run out of money. I mean, people are already moving out of my apartment building because they can't pay rent. I mean, it's like things are going to break if people can't go back to work and if people can't get healthcare. I mean, I don't know if you saw the Trump postcard that was like, 5 things to do, Trump's tips on coronavirus or whatever. And basically like every tip was stay home. It was like, if you have blah, 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 stay home. If you have blah, 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 stay home. Because if you stay home, then your numbers aren't counted, right? And then it's kind of like, well, if you die, then, it's kind of like invisible.
Well, they want to have insurance companies waive the fees for the testing, but it still doesn't take care of the problem of what if somebody without insurance, who's also unemployed, then they test positive. It doesn't cover the hospital bill. So yeah, the test is free, but where do you go after that?
Yeah, and that brings up another good point, just from what I know, just because my wife's a surgeon and I do a lot of healthcare finance. A lot of hospitals get their money, right? They get decent amount of revenue in from elective surgeries, just the cost of surgeries and everything that comes through, which are basically canceled right now. So a lot of hospitals are deep in the red. And coronavirus patients, which are taking up entire hospital systems, are not paying the bills. They're not paying for the doctors. I actually know doctors that are working in New York pretty much for free. They're basically they've been drafted to work for free.
Yeah.
And that was one of the reasons why you get the 7 p.m. clapping every night by New York City, because that does help. I've heard from doctors in New York City, it says that does help. They're not getting paid right
does
now.
It?
It does, yes.
It
has said that they have. It really makes them feel as a part of the community, and the city has rallied behind them. But entire hospitals and hospital systems can go into deep bankruptcy as a result of this, because nobody is going to pay for insurance company, whether you're insured or you're not insured. The amount of money that's going to be pumped out in order to pay the hospital bills is never going to cover all of this. A lot of this stuff, a lot of this debt just needs to get deleted as if this never happened. And that's where we're going to need to have the federal government step up. Unfortunately, I don't think anybody thinks that this administration's going to even be able to even contemplate something like that. That's what I'm worried about. Like, not only, nobody has enough money to pay their rent, nobody has money to buy food, but now we don't even have hospital systems that are solvent in order to keep us alive should we, God forbid, get COVID, or we break a finger, or we have some other normal health ailment. I mean, we as human beings suffer from all kinds of health ailments.
Yeah.
That stuff doesn't go away just because COVID's here. That's why I'm so worried about us going into an extremely dark part of our history unless something radical is done here to fix and put some true foundation under our country at this point.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. It's terrifying and depressing.
One of the things that you had in your book about outbreak narratives is that there's always a map that's showing the spread of the outbreak. And I think about that every time I turn on the news and they're giving us a new map where you're just seeing it spread and spread and spread.
I know, because it's all about how do you make the invisible visible. And so on one hand, you have these maps, and then you also have these now it's so familiar, these close-up shots of what the coronavirus really looks like, under an electron microscope. But they both serve the same purpose. Yeah.
Well, I was wondering when I was looking at that map, making the invisible visible, if that might not be part of the psychology behind wearing masks, that when everybody's going out and wearing a mask, that you become hyper aware of anybody could be a carrier or you're a carrier. It's not the same as at home. Like you said, at home, you're not thinking about it, but as soon as you go out and you see everyone with a mask over their face, they're a threat.
Right. But I think it's also the masks really emphasize the social distancing, because it's not just the mask. It's like when you see someone with a mask, you don't want to sit next to them. When you see someone with a mask, it's now what's funny is if you don't wear a mask, they look at you funny. If you're not wearing a mask, it's like, ugh. But it's like you see people and you just, now it's becoming customary to kind of, do 6 feet minimum detour. So, that's what was so weird when I went to the grocery store for the first time. And it was not only did we have this line to get in where everyone's 6 feet apart, but you're in it and it's you want to go down the aisle to get the applesauce. And it's well, there are 2 people in that aisle, so I won't go down that aisle right now.
Definitely have done that.
It's
I've avoided it.
Yeah. Rudy, you do that regularly.
I do. I suffer from OCD.
Regularly.
I do. The strangest thing about this whole COVID thing is I was walking around with hand sanitizer and
Me
opening up doors with towels, and
Me
I
too.
wouldn't leave a bathroom unless somebody would come in from the outside and
or
was
have a
trapped
paper
in there.
towel.
Yeah, because they have the stupid air dryer, and I refuse to use the air
Oh,
dryers.
no. Those are horrible.
Horrible.
No, after writing,
horrible.
yeah.
Yeah, no. So now it's as if the entire world
Has caught up with us.
is caught up with this brain of mine, and it's going to be a sick world. I feel sorry for everybody. I've been like this for 20 years, and I'm relatively survived,
Right.
but I feel sorry for everybody else.
That's how I feel being an introvert. Everyone's like, we got to stay inside. I'm like, cool. What do you mean?
I know. I mean, 80% of my life is the same as it was before.
Yeah, not me. I am suffering. I get my energy from people. I love being outside. My favorite part of my job is business developing. I love being out there. I love meeting with people. I hate shaking hands. I hate getting close to anybody that has a cough. But I really, truly get my energy from people. And this is extremely hard for me, and it's against my core. Although I will say, last night my wife said something that kind of depressed me a little bit. She goes, ever since this pandemic has happened, she goes, my social life has gone like through the roof. Like, I get to see you more, and I'm actually having a lot more fun. And that was I don't know what to say about that other than I'm sorry, but because she's not working very much because all of her surgeries are canceled. I'm home all the time. So it's just all about perspective, I guess. I don't know. I'm personally suffering. I'm hurting. I'm definitely hurting here. Yes.
Do you think the handshake is out the window now?
Better be.
God, I hope so. I hope so.
I'm wondering what will be when we'll say before the pandemic, we did such and such, and I'm wondering if the handshake is out the door.
It better be. I swear to God, I hated it. I hate the handshake. I hate it.
Well, what are Europeans going to do? What about the kiss on the cheek?
Well, one of the things that horrified me the most is all these people that I thought were washing their hands that weren't washing their hands. Like, all these people that had to be taught how to wash their hands. And I was like, have you not been doing this all along? And so it's like, now I definitely don't want to shake anyone's hand or kiss. Like, it's just people, like all these people that went out and bought all these like soaps and cleaning products. Like, you didn't have that at home already? Yeah, like Rudy, I already had everything.
It's so true. I mean, literally, I would always walk around with hand sanitizer in my pockets. And I'm so good at that. Like, whenever somebody would force me to shake their hand, like a client or something, I'd be really good about putting my hand in my pocket and opening up the hand sanitizer and cleaning my hand, because I can't sit there and actually have a conversation with somebody unless I clean my hands. Yes. Guess what?
Oh my God.
The rest, no. The rest of the world is now becoming like Rudy Salo. It's a sick world. I feel sorry for the world.
I would see people touching buttons on elevators, and I would be like, that's like crossing the street with your eyes closed. I'm like, oh my God, that's like so reckless. How can you do that? I was like a master of like the sleeve or the elbow, or, it's so the rest of the world is catching up.
It's so true.
I was definitely behind the curve.
You know what I worry about? Here's something that really, I'm really, really worried about. And should you ever read it, I don't mean to I don't want to give too much away of it, but this is a little bit of a spoiler alert in the raffle. Here's what I'm worried about, and I'm serious about this. With everybody in the world now using Lysol, with everybody washing their hands, with everybody doing hand sanitizer, what I worry about what the next pandemic is going to be is a super bacterial bug that cannot be killed by one of these hand sanitizers or anything like that. There's already a lot of evidence out there about how even before this pandemic, hand sanitizer and the antibacterial soaps were making bacteria stronger. Mm-hmm. I have no idea what this is going to produce for us, and am really, 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 really scared about that. I really am. That's a terrible thing to think about, but it's going to happen.
No, I think antibacterial soaps, I wouldn't recommend using those.
Well, don't viruses come along about every 10 years? From SARS to Ebola, there will be another wave.
Viruses are not necessarily affected by antibacterial soap. Right now we're dealing with viruses. The next thing that I'm worried about is some super strain of bacteria
Oh, I
because
see.
we're making bacteria so much stronger with all the antibacterial soap and all the hand sanitizers and all the cleaning that we're doing out there. That is what I fear is what comes next after COVID-19. I hate to say it, but that's what I think happens.
We're building up immunity to antibiotics. So we're definitely headed in that direction.
Yes. So here's what I think is going to happen. I think we all need to transfer our brains and souls into computers. I do. I don't know if you've studied the 2045 initiative. This is a real thing. This is a no joke. Go on to the Google and study the 2045 initiative. There are people out there that are working on trying to transfer us into computers. I swear that's going to be the next phase of things. There's plenty of stories out there because our human bodies are not going to be able to live in this world anymore.
Right.
Well,
my prediction.
I want to get to one of the tropes. There's two things that really stand out to me. One of them is this othering, and the other one is how contagious disease can bring us together. Those two things, they are both happening. So this othering that you talked about happens in films, like the disease comes from the Middle East or it comes from Africa or something like that. What do you see happening? What parallel do you see happening now with COVID-19?
Oh, like the parallels are so uncanny that it's almost like you want to, slap people and be like, be original for a second. But the whole, everything like that the administration was saying, they were calling it the Chinese flu and the Wuhan flu, and they called it Kung flu. It was just like the racial language was just like so offensive. And there are all these documented cases of Asian Americans who were assaulted. And I even have, there's, a nice guy who lives on my street and he wasn't even trying to be racist. But when this was all starting, he asked me if he could still eat Chinese food. It's like, we love to have these things kind of like, oh, it's coming from there, right? It's not like our fault. It's coming from there. It's the Chinese fault. It's their hygiene standards fault or whatever. Just the way that was playing out in real life, it was crazy. But it was like, yes, Asian Americans face a ton of sort of racial insults and violence because of the virus.
Right. I know that this sounds super naive, but it's just for if anybody says, wait a minute, but it came from China. Why can't we call it that? What is your answer to somebody who would have that idea? Like, what makes it so bad? I'm just asking for anybody, because I've heard people say, wait, I don't really get the problem. It started out there. So why is it racist to say that? What is your response?
I think, first of all, we can use, AIDS as an example. Just for, if we called AIDS the African virus, for instance.
Okay.
Partly, it would have kind of been like this gross oversimplification, but also what ends up happening is, it's kind of, I'm trying to give an example, like if you're a detective on a case and you decide that, Jack is only killing brunettes, then blondes are going to feel sort of, they're cool. They're not under threat. This is a virus that just kills brunettes. This is a virus that just comes from Detroit or whatever. People are going to be less concerned about it because they tend to think of it as like being specific to this geographic area or this specific kind of demographic of person or whatever. And so partly that creates a lot of problems, but also we don't where did AIDS come from? We kind of know, but I don't know. To me, it seems irrelevant.
Yeah, it is. No, I completely agree. I'm just thinking it's frustrating when I've seen stuff on Twitter or online where people are not really getting why it's problematic to say that. So I was just wondering what would be your answer to that. But you're right. It's also a way to evade responsibility too by the way that the US responded to the cases in the United States is to keep saying it was their thing. And it is really frightening because all I could think of is it's going to tank so many businesses. So because there are so many, you're going to tank Asian Americans' businesses because even calling it the Chinese virus, it doesn't mean that it would only impact Chinese. It would impact Asian Americans. Yeah. It was just so frustrating.
Look at the way that it's destroyed Corona beer and that brand. It absolutely had impact. People stopped drinking Corona beer because it was called a coronavirus.
That wraps up part 1 of our interview with Dahlia Schweitzer. Go to her website, thisisdahlia.com to learn more about her, and you can get a copy of her book, Going Viral: Zombies, Viruses, and the End of the World. If you have any questions about this interview, you can tweet me at @gdolske or send an email, goodisinthedetailspod@gmail.com. Send an email. I'd like some email. Yeah. And if you have any mentions for fitness instructors, for teachers that you would like at the end of the next pod, you can DM me on Instagram, tweet me, or again, email. Kind of want some email. I just want to give a mention for the people we're missing in this quarantine life. Last time it was hairdressers, and this time, what classes are you missing? What teachers really stand out? And your fitness instructors. I miss Pendulum, and I'm glad to be back via Zoom. Although it's kind of weird working out in my office. But hey, it's good to see everyone. Okay, stay safe. I look forward to hearing from you. Part 2 will be coming up shortly. Bye.